What is the value of a class? In the reference manual, it is stated that every object has a type, an identity, and a value. Every object has an identity, a type, and a value. For instances, these look straightforward. At least, I suspect value equals 10 is true. For classes, the type and it are again easy to find. But, what is considered as the value for this object? Its attributes and methods?
The Python language reference doesn't bother to define the concept of value, leaving it a fuzzy, intuitive notion. Trying to apply the concept beyond the point where it becomes unintuitive doesn't work well, and the Python language reference itself doesn't try. If you really want to pick something to call the value of foo, you could say the value is a user-defined type with base class object and one method, _init_, that takes one argument named a and assigns it to the attribute of self, but this won't be useful as part of your conceptual model or as a tool for communicating with other people.
I believe the usual meaning of the value of an object is enough of its attributes to determine whether it compares equal to another object of the same type. In this example, the sets X and Y have the same value and same class but different identities. In this case, F and G have the same type but different identities and different values, even though all their attributes are the same. F and H have the same identity and value. Incidentally, we have made the _EQ_ method simply return false always, so that H and F, or for that matter F and F, have the same identity but different values, but I imagine such a broken equality definition would break in some places in practice. Equality should be an equivalence relation.
The reference manual notes, somewhat obliquely, that value is a notion for each type to define for itself, emphasis added. An object's type determines the operations that the object supports, for example, does it have a length? And also defines the possible values for objects of that type. In other words, there is no general notion of what a value is. Each type defines for itself what value means for objects of that type. Usually, the notion of value is linked to the notion of equality. Objects are considered to have the same value if the compare equal. So a type can specify its notion of value by defining an _EQ_ method. So, to answer your specific question about classes, in this sense, the value of a class object is just itself, since class objects are compared by object identity, and no two class objects are equal.
I contend that the notion of value has a meaning only if we are able to compare it against another object. This claim is supported by the official Python 3 documentation. Chapter Objects, Values and Type states that objects have a value, in addition to type and identity. The value of an object is a rather abstract notion in Python. For example, there is no canonical access method for an object's value. Also, there is no requirement that the value of an object should be constructed in a particular way, for example comprised of all its data attributes. Comparison operators implement a particular notion of what the value of an object is. One can think of them as defining the value of an object indirectly, by means of their comparison implementation. The notion of value is even orthogonal to the type. Thus, if a value of an object can be examined only through equality testing, then we must admit that the value of a class object is indistinguishable from its identity. Proof. In the above example, the function make_class creates a new class object on every call. Semantically, those class objects should be identical, even if they are defined not to be empty. Still, objects from different invocations of the make_class function do not compare equal, therefore they are assumed to have non-equal values merely because they have different identities.
If you want to see more, please consider subscribing.